There we go. Alright, now we should have volume on YouTube. Sorry, YouTube. There was no volume, and now there is volume. Nobody's watching over there anyway, so it's all good anyway. So, we said our prayer, and now we're going to talk about one problem I have with Amazon Prime Video, which is not quite like Netflix and not like YouTube, because I watch a lot of movies in a lot of different places. Well, I don't really watch a lot of movies, but whenever I'm sick or whenever I'm off work and I have a lot of extra time, which is not normal, I try to catch a movie or a TV show here or there. Sometimes I watch YouTube, sometimes Netflix. I also have Verve, which includes like anime, Crunchyroll, and it also has, I can't think of the Curiosity Stream, which has a lot of cool, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Documentaries. So, and in November, the new Disney platform, Disney Plus, is going to be coming out. I've already signed up for the, you know, what do you call it? Pre-order, whatever. So it's going to be $6.99. That's the cheapest option out there right now. Disney is really going to try to just lose money on it to begin with to kind of try to overtake Netflix, and they own most of Hulu, so I don't even, that doesn't make sense. But they're also going to be, they're basically competing with Netflix and CBS and all these other platforms that are out there, HBO, but they're not competing with Hulu because Disney owns a majority stake in Hulu, which I'm guessing is where they're going to get most of their streaming technology from, because you can't just start a streaming service out of nowhere. You have to have some kind of backbone for the technology. And I think, I'm just speculating here, that they're going to be using Hulu's technology, which is the reason why they bought a stake in it in the first place. So we're going to talk about a couple of the movies that I watched. We're going to talk about some of the action ones first. Let's see. So I watched Death Wish, which came out in 2018. It stars Bruce Willis and Vincent D'Onofrio. I don't know if I said that right. D'Onofrio? It's probably D'Onofrio. He was great in Daredevil. He was playing um, the Kingpin, and I think he was the best Kingpin I've seen in any iteration of Daredevil. And that guy who's the Daredevil, I don't know everybody's names, I usually have it pulled up, but I don't have it pulled up right now. But that whole Daredevil cast was the best of any iteration of Daredevil I've ever seen. So it's sad that they maybe might not ever be coming back unless Disney decides to bring them back, because, you know, they're off of Netflix now, and I don't know if Disney is really into the kind of R-rated superheroes, but that's neither here nor there. So it's got Bruce Willis and Vincent D'Onofrio, and it came out in 2018. It is basically, it says that it's a mild-mannered father is transformed into a killing machine after his family is torn apart by a violent act. And basically, a short synopsis of the movie is that Bruce Willis's character is a doctor. This doctor lives in Chicago, and it's, you know, it's a very dangerous city. So lots of crimes happen, and he has to try to do surgeries on cops and criminals as they come into his hospital. Just so happens that one time his family's house gets broken into, and he's not home because he had to go on a shift at the hospital to do some surgery. So his daughter and his wife are basically, they're not attacked. They were just gonna rob the place, but then the daughter are fighting. The one guy is gonna try to rape the daughter or whatever, so she fights back, and then the mom has to try to fight, and they get killed. Well, they don't get killed. The wife gets killed, and this isn't a spoiler because it's the beginning of the movie when this happens. So the wife gets shot and killed, and the daughter gets shot, but she goes in a coma. So Bruce Willis basically snaps, and in the evolution of the movie, go around and start killing criminals, basically. Long story short, he becomes a vigilante, and a lot of things happen. And I had a movie review system because I had a movie review channel called Coffee and Critiques. Now, the problem that I realized with any internet venture is if you create a new venture for each thing you're doing, you're never going to be able to keep up with them all, because the problem is you have to log into different places at different times to upload different things. My new plan of attack is to just upload everything on the same channel, and if people are confused or upset or whatever, too bad. It's like, I don't have time to make a new channel for every time I have a good idea, and who knows if I'm going to want to do that idea in another month, another week, another day. I'm an eclectic person. I'm creative and I like to do different things, so I'm going to put everything on the same channel. Watch what you like, don't what you don't, basically. So that's my new mindset about content creation, and not really gonna be like a curator anymore, like, oh, I'm gonna curate my life and you're only gonna see what I want you to see on this channel and you're only gonna see those things on that channel. No, 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 not anymore. Now I'm basically a TV station, or I'm a newspaper. In a newspaper, a news website, you have sports, you have blogs, you have political opinion pieces, you have legal, you have letters to the editor. Okay, so now with my YouTube channel, with my social media, it's going to be like a newspaper or like a TV station. There's going to be different channels, different shows at different times. So that's why I'm just going to post everything up on one YouTube channel, on one Facebook, whatever. Everything's going to be everywhere. So that's why movie reviews today. Death Wish. Back to Death Wish. The way I used to do movie reviews was I asked basically 3 questions. One is, would you see it? I remember. I think it's, would you see it and why? And now I don't even remember. I think it was something like, would you recommend somebody else to go see it? What was your favorite part? And what was your least favorite part? That's what it was. So, Death Wish. Would I recommend it? First of all, I'm way behind the curve here. I'm a year late, but that's okay. Would I recommend people to see it? Definitely, I would recommend you to see it. If you have Amazon Prime, you can see it for free over there. So go see it. If you are kind of squeamish with violence and things like that, I wouldn't suggest it, because Eli Roth directed it, and you know he's big into like heads exploding and things like that. So if you're not into that kind of thing, don't see it. It is hyper violent. There's a lot of shooting, a lot of killing, but surprisingly, there's not a like ton of profanity, sexual references, things like that. It's mostly about this guy getting revenge on his wife's killers, basically. So it has a lot of action. Bruce Willis is doing his thing like he used to do in Die Hard and other action movies. So good on him for that. I loved it for that aspect of it, and it was a great movie. I would suggest it if you have Amazon Prime. Definitely see it. It has 4 stars out of 1,000 reviews, and the people who are probably giving it a lower review is because the violence was a little bit over the top and the acting wasn't like perfect acting. It's an action movie. It's like a 90s action movie where the acting isn't super important, because the action is, basically, and the action, ooh, superb. It's great. So that's what I liked best. What I didn't like, I would say I didn't like some of the hyper violence. Like in one scene, I don't want to spoil it or whatever, but in one scene a guy gets killed and it is like so gory, that the way they show it, that they didn't need to. They could have like turned the camera or kind of let the sound play and the guy scream or whatever and not show it actually happened, but they just showed it and it's just too much. I was like, ugh. They showed it for like a half second, but I was like, you didn't even need to have that half second in there. It's just unnecessary. So that's what I didn't like, and yeah, totally would recommend Death Wish 2018 with Bruce Willis, which is a remake, and I don't remember it was Charles Bronson who originally made Death Wish. I think it was 1975 or something. 1974. And now we're going to move on to Sleepless. Sleepless is a 2017 movie with Jamie Foxx starring in the lead role, Michelle Monaghan as the like second follow-up lead, and then you have Dermot Mulroney. I don't even know who that guy is. It was directed by Baran Bo Odar, and it's an action slash suspense movie. It is very good. Oops, I messed up there. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to go over the synopsis real quick. An undercover Las Vegas police officer must race against time to save his kidnapped son from a crew of murderous gangsters. And there's a little bit more to it than that. Basically, he's undercover. He's trying to do a huge drug bust. So he has to like steal and sell drugs in order to find out who the major kingpin is. And so what happens is that there's this one kind of job they do where they steal some drugs, and it's like, I don't know, 25 kilos of cocaine or something like that, and they didn't know that it was that much drugs. They thought it was a small little theft. We're going to steal a couple of drugs, we're going to make some money. But it was a big deal, and the guys whose cocaine it was, they're really upset about it, and they're trying to get it back. It's a big mix-up, so they kidnap Jamie Foxx's son and try to force him to bring the drugs back. He brings the drugs to them without any spoilers. It is an old movie, but still not going to do any spoilers. But not an undercover, an internal affairs officer who doesn't know that he's undercovers comes and takes the drugs while he's not looking, and then the movie just goes on from there because he doesn't have the drugs. All this crazy stuff happens, and he's trying to get his son back without actually having the drugs, trying to get the drugs back and all this stuff. In the end, everything turned out honky-dory, except there was like a final credit scenes, kind of like a Marvel movie or whatever, and I was like, I wish they hadn't left it on the cliffhanger, but that's neither here nor there. My review. Would I suggest it, or like, should you go see it? Yeah, sure. It's on Amazon Prime. I'm pretty much going to recommend all these movies if you have Amazon Prime because it's already free. So, should you go see it? Sure. It's on Amazon Prime. If you have Prime, go watch it. It has 3.5 stars with 400 reviews, but I thought it was good. It is a basically thought-free action movie. There's car chases, there's gunfights, there's not a lot of like deep thought acting going on, but the action sequences are superb. They're really good, and I thought that the storyline was kind of a little bit convoluted. Like there was a lot going on in the storyline just for it to be like, oh, there's undercover cops and drugs. They really went maybe too deep with it, but other than that, the action sequences are great, and they could have maybe made it in simpler setup without all the other different plot points and maybe not leave it on a cliffhanger. But other than that, it was a good movie. What I liked best, the action sequences were great. There was this great car chase. Right in the beginning of the movie, there was a great gunfight, a couple of different great gunfights. But the one at the very end, ooh, it was very good. And what I didn't like, I mean, I guess that the story was just like too convoluted as far as why they were getting the drugs, who's undercover, who's not, and different things like that. It was kind of, they're stretching the imagination very thin with how this guy's been undercover for all this time, and nobody knew. He's in the same department as the lady who's trying to chase him down, but she has no idea, and it was just like kind of mind-boggling. Like maybe it would have been better if he was just a dirty cop and like but they wanted to make him a redeeming kind of character. They wanted you to be able to look up to him, but maybe the movie would have made more sense if he was just a dirty cop, like, and they took his son because he was stealing drugs. But that's neither here nor there. I would recommend this movie, Sleepless, with Jamie Foxx from 2017. It is on Amazon Prime. Go see it. Undone is a animated series. If you have ever seen, what's the name of the movie with Keanu Reeves? A Scanner Darkly, which now I'm thinking about it, I want to see again. A Scanner Darkly was the first movie to use this technology, which is basically recording a whole movie and then kind of having a computer program that draws over top of it. I'm not sure if they rotoscoped it like what they used to do back in the day, how they made the lightsabers in Star Wars, in the original Star Wars, and the ghosts in the original two Ghostbusters. They rotoscoped, which is basically taking the film itself, and I'm not sure how they do this, but taking it, and I don't know if they put it into the computer or they just draw on it, but they draw on each frame somehow. Like for the lightsaber, you just had a metal rod there, but then they drew like a light around it to make it look like it was light. For Ghostbusters, you have a normal scene and they're just kind of reacting to nothing there, and you on each frame draw in a little ghost, and it in each frame, and then it moves kind of like just like a cartoon. So it was taking the skills of animators from cartoons and putting it into live action. So that's rotoscoping, if you didn't know. So it's kind of like a rotoscoping technique. I'm not sure if they use a computer to do it, like automatically do it, but it's a really cool effect. And I've only seen it done in 2 movies. The first movie I saw it in was A Scanner Darkly. And this is the second, which is not necessarily a movie, but a series, but it could have just been a really long movie. But it is, I believe, 8 episodes. Yeah, it's 8 about 40-minute episodes about, well, I'll read the synopsis. Anyway, Undone just came out. It stars Rosa Salazar, who you might remember from Alita Battle Angel, which is a great movie. I really liked Alita Battle Angel, and I liked what she did in that movie. So, Undone stars her, Angelique Cabral, and Constance Marie. It stars a lot of other people too, but those are the main 3 actresses. And they star as 2 sisters and a mom. But let me read the synopsis from Amazon. Undone is a half-hour, genre-bending, animated dramedy that explores the elastic nature of reality through its central character, Alma, a 28-year-old living in San Antonio, Texas. After getting into a car accident and nearly dying, Alma finds she has a new relationship to time. She develops this new ability in order to find out the truth about her father's death. And this is brand new. This is just came out, so I really don't want to spoil it at all. That synopsis was enough. So I'm just going to kind of do my review based off of that without doing any spoilers. So would I suggest watching it? Definitely. Even if you don't have Amazon Prime, I would suggest watching it, because it's really good. It's really well made. The acting is good. The storyline is good. It's all very convincing, and yeah, I liked it a lot. I would definitely suggest you to go see it. What I liked the most, I definitely like the animation style the most. It really captivates you, like, especially when you're watching movies and TV shows all the time. I've seen cartoon shows, I've seen anime shows, I've seen live action shows, I've seen shows, fully computer generated shows, but this animation style is quite different. It was similar to when I first watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That animation style was really mind-blowing, and it just captured you and really sucked you into the movie and wanted you to keep watching and to watch it again. What I really like the most about Undone is the animation style. The acting is good, the storyline is good, but that animation really pulls you in and it makes you want to keep watching. So, that's what I like the best. What I didn't like about this show, I didn't really like, I'm Catholic, as you guys know. I didn't really like the kind of idea that they're putting out there that shamans have these special skills or special powers to access things that other people don't have. Like, you have to be an indigenous person doing these dances or smoking your peace pipe or putting your incense into the air or whatever in order to get access to these powers. I wish it was a little bit more scientific about it, and it did kind of explain about the time, and it's kind of a time, not, I wouldn't really say time travel, but kind of. It's a time bending show and a mentalist kind of show, talking about how your mind has these powers and things. But I would have liked for it to be more generic. I love time travel movies and shows and things like that, because it's not really questioning if there's time travel. It has nothing to do with my faith. Like, if there's time travel, that doesn't make it mean that Jesus didn't come and, die for us to save us, unless somebody goes back and they say, oh, well, I saw it wasn't this way, or it was this way. Then I'm like, okay, well, take me back and let's go see together. So time travel for me doesn't really invalidate anything unless you can go all the way back and see exactly what happened. But if it's something about going forward or being able to change things or whatever, it's just, I really just like the idea. I like the scientific parts of it, and science for me it doesn't challenge. I haven't seen any scientific evidence to challenge my faith. Like, science goes hand in hand. Like, everything science is finding, awesome. That's really cool. It doesn't say that the point of science is to prove more wonderful things about the natural world, not things about the spiritual world, which we really haven't had any access to be able to see other than from our own mind. So I like the aspect that this show put in about your mind being the power to unlock certain things that science and other things can't. But I didn't like how it went in the direction of like the shamans and they have the power and the different things. And however, I did like that it wasn't like drug related or whatever. It's not like, oh, you got to take these drugs, get these powers, or whatever. Some things that I've heard people like Joe Rogan and others saying about DMT and ayahuasca and stuff, which I'm not a fan of any kind of drugs or whatever at all. That's just me. But I like that they didn't go that route, saying, oh, you need to do these kind of drugs or these kind of things to access these powers. She accessed the powers because she got in a car accident, but her father was experimenting on her as well, um, trying to help her unlock that. I don't know if that was basically, the show is about her kind of getting these powers to be able to travel through time and trying to master them so that she can change the past. Basically, those aren't really spoilers. I mean, they're probably going to show you that in the trailer, but maybe the car accident part was a spoiler, but that kind of happened in the first episode. So, oopsie if I spoiled. I really didn't mean to. But there's a lot more of that than just that going on in the show. So I really didn't like the big reveals. I didn't spoil it all. So yeah, totally go see it. I loved the animation style, and I wish that they would have leaned more towards a generic scientific or a more nebulous, like, oh, this is just some people just have this power thing, instead of the, oh, it's indigenous people and it's, you got to do the peace pipe and all this, because there's this big hullabaloo right now about indigenous people and how they're so much better, even in the Catholic Church, and it's like really blowing my mind. It's like how they're so much better because they haven't been affected by Western society, and they haven't been affected by modernization and all that. And I'm like, well, it's like not everything old is good and not everything new is good. Some old things are good, some old things are bad, some new things are good, some new things are bad. That's just the way the world is. It's not all one way or the other. It's not like, oh, this is pristine because they haven't been affected by all the stuff we're doing yet. That doesn't mean that it's a good thing. There's lots of good things that we have. Especially medical things and stuff like that. Dietary stuff, our diets are much better, our medical needs are being met in much more efficient ways, and technology wise we can communicate better. And some people might say, ugh, wish we couldn't, but it is good that we can, if something emergency happens, we can contact somebody all the way across the world and say, hey, this is going on with grandma or grandpa or whatever, or we can fly wherever we need to go if something happens. So I think that's great. I also think there's bad parts to it, but like everything indigenous isn't good just because it's quote unquote untouched, it's pristine. Everything new isn't good just because it's new. So, I think that there's right now the world, not the world, but the Hollywood kind of like media world is leaning way too heavily on that side, like to kind of make it seem like that's better than other things. So, Undone, check it out. It's got 4.5 stars with 800 reviews on Amazon Prime Video. It is great. Go watch it. And I'm going to do a review for 2 more movies because I was sick for 4 days. I was sick Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I was off work. Well, I was already off work on the weekend. I left work early on Friday, and that's why there was like one podcast I did, I think on Sunday, but like that took a lot of energy to be able to do that. So now I'm feeling better. So here we go on a full, almost 30 minutes podcast now. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. The next movie I want to review is a time travel movie. The next two movies are time travel movies. And the first one is 41. And 41 came out in 2014. It stars Chris Gibson and David McCrae. And the director is Glenn Triggs. The summary on Amazon Prime is: a young man discovers a hole in the floor of a local motel that leads to yesterday. And that pretty much sums the movie up. It got a lot of awards and stuff when it came out, but what do awards mean? You know, like, I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm not a big fan of if a movie has gotten awards or not. It really doesn't mean it's good or bad, in my opinion. Like, you just, like, with movies, it is similar to music, that it's a lot of personal taste, I believe. But there are also some things with this story. A story is a good story, whether you like it or not. For example, there are certain things that need to happen in a story in order to make it a good story. Right? You have to have a lead character, and the lead character has to have a motive, and they have to have some kind of antagonist. The antagonist could be a person or could be a thing. For example, in San Andreas, it was The Rock was the protagonist, and he had a motivation to, I guess, save his family. I've never seen it. The antagonist was the big, huge storm that was, a volcano, whatever it was, that was tearing up everything. He had to get away from that and protect his family from that. Maybe it's a good story, maybe it's not, but it has a good story structure from there. Whatever they did with it, who knows. But this particular movie has all those elements, but I think that the delivery was a little weak, and this is why I say that. Would I suggest you to see it? If you're really into time travel, go ahead. But I'm kind of on the fence about suggesting it to people because I was just okay. I didn't really, I don't want to say I didn't like it, but it wasn't refer worthy, I should say. So, getting into 41. The premise is really cool. You find a hole in the bathroom of a motel. It takes you to yesterday. So you can only change. And it doesn't even exactly take you to yesterday. It takes you 12 hours back. So not 24. So you can change anything 12 hours back. So I'm like, okay, that's a cool premise. So it's a British movie. So if you're not into UK accents, then you're going to have to get over that. But like I said, I wouldn't suggest it anyway. But, so this guy finds this, well, I guess I didn't really like it, so I guess I'll go ahead and ruin it. So, spoiler alert, if you wanted to see 41, you probably shouldn't anyway. I'm going to spoil it. So, this guy, the main character, he sees himself in the beginning of the movie, like another version of himself that says, don't go to such and such motel. So, of course, what does he do? He goes to that motel. And there he finds his old girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend that he had broken up with. And they get to talking, they go out to eat and all this cool stuff. And then he offers to drive her home, and what do you know? They end up getting in a car accident. Lo and behold, the reason they get in an accident is because he was standing, himself from another version of himself that went back into the past, was standing in the street for whatever reason, trying to stop the accident, which ended up causing the accident. So yeah, it's really weird. One of those kind of time loop paradox things. And one thing that I really didn't like, before I even get to what I like, well, let me get to what I liked first. So long story short, the whole point of the movie is him to try to stop from getting in this accident and killing the girlfriend where he lives. He lives, he's perfectly fine, but the ex-girlfriend dies. Which also means that the police are after him because they think he had something to do with it. Maybe it was a suicide mission, but she died and he didn't. So he has two motives to try to go back and fix things. One is to save his ex-girlfriend that he really still loves, and two is to not end up in jail. I think the jail aspect could have been totally thrown away. There's no reason for that to be in there. There's enough motive for him to go back in time just to save the girlfriend who he truly loves. Why do you have to put in the jail aspect? They were trying to spice it up. I think it was just too much. So, the police tell him not to leave. He leaves because there's a guy in the hospital who says there's a hole in room 41 at the motel. Go in there and you will be able to go back in time, basically. He doesn't say exactly that you'll be able to go back in time, but yeah. So he goes in the hole and he goes back and he tries to save excuse me, his girlfriend. He ends up causing a crash. He tries to go back multiple times to try to figure it out. And then he finds out that the old guy who was in the hospital, who told him to go to the hotel room to go back in time in the first place, has in a different timeline actually figured out how to make himself a lawyer instead of a bum, because the guy in the hospital was pretty much a bum. So he ends up being a lawyer in one of these other timelines. So he's like, well, how'd you do it? And he said, well, you can't change what you're going to do in the moment, but you can change the conditions for the decisions you're going to make. I really liked this part of the movie, so let's get to what I liked. I liked that it had kind of a message of, if you were to go back in time, which a lot of time travel movies have done, I like the way that Endgame did it the best. Endgame was like, you can't change the past, but you can go to a different timelines and change those, and use that information from a previous timeline. Basically, they took the stones and brought them back to change your present, but you can never change your past. You can only change someone else's present, because it hasn't happened yet. So I thought that was really cool how they did that. First time I saw it done really well, because Terminator just gives you a headache trying to think about the timeline, and how every time they do something, it's like, oh my goodness, are there different timelines? Is it one timeline? What's going on? Because in the first movie, you said you guys destroyed the time machine right before Kyle Reese went back, right? But then Terminator 2 happens. You're like, wait a second. Kyle Reese said the time machine was destroyed, and that the machines were about to be completely beaten and done. So why is there another Terminator coming back? An even better Terminator? Are there different timelines? What's going on? And I think even in Terminator Dark Fate, they're not going to explain what was really happening. So yeah, so that's a hot mess. What was I saying? I was talking about 41. So in the movie 41, what I really didn't like was that there were multiple plot points, multiple motives going on that were kind of unnecessary, and the acting kind of fell a little flat for me. I know it's an indie movie. I'm not saying that they're bad actors, because I'm no actor myself, but comparison to other movies I've seen, and I love indie movies. I've seen a lot of indie movies with great acting, and this one just was kind of just like, meh, it was okay. And like, the guy is really doing everything to try to help the girlfriend, and they didn't build up enough that the girlfriend is important. Like, they didn't show me them interacting enough. He met her, she got in the car with him, she died, and I'm like, okay, this girl's super important, but I've seen her for all of 2 minutes. Like, this character is so important to the movie, but you have not spent any time building her up at all. So like, that's very confusing to me. And it just kind of fell flat, because there wasn't any real emotion behind it, because we're spending all this time with this guy, who supposedly loves this girl, but we're just not seeing why he loves her, or how their relationship blossomed, or anything like that. So his whole point, the MacGuffin of the whole movie, we don't care about at all. She was on screen for 2 seconds, she died, and now the whole movie's about her. It's not about him, it's about her. And he is not an interesting character. He's just not. He showed no emotion at all. He's like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, except, like in The Matrix, you're supposed to put yourself in this Neo, right? But in this movie, that's not the case. That character is very important but the guy just doesn't play it very well. He's kind of like stone-faced. He doesn't really show many different emotions in the movie, so that was not really any fun. So that's 41 in a nutshell. The ending was very good, but I just wouldn't suggest it in general. Now, now we're going to talk about my favorite movie other than Undone, of all the movies that I watched while I was sick, and it's called Excursion, and you can catch it on Amazon Prime, just like all these other ones. And it stars Johnny Midland, Richard Canal, and Sophie Wilson. It came out last year, 2018. It has 3.5 stars, which is very sad because I would definitely suggest people to watch this movie if you have Amazon Prime. Again, it's called Excursion, and the synopsis is Tom, a successful London lawyer in his 50s, wakes up in the middle of the night and stares in his own 20-year-old face. His younger version traveled in time to see if the regime he lives in and works for is prospering in the future. So I really like this movie a lot. And I guess a lot of people don't because it only has 3.5 stars. This was my favorite movie of all the movies I watched while I was sick, other than Undone. Undone was a series, so it doesn't really count. So, the reason why I said I suggest it. Yes, I do suggest this movie. And the reason why is because what was good about it? One, let me make sure my recorder has enough space. They're saying I have 7 minutes left, so I'm going to wrap it up. So what I really liked about Excursion was the storyline. I love the storyline so much, and the acting. So the acting has to go really well with the storyline for this movie to work, because this guy, he grew up in the Ukraine, in the Soviet Union, and I'm not going to spoil it because it's so good. I really want you to go see it. So he grew up in the Ukraine, in the Soviet Union, and he was in the army for the Soviet Union. So he really believed all the propaganda and things like that about socialism and communism and all that. As he grew older, of course, he realized it was all a big farce. They were just cheating people, stealing their stuff, and treating them badly, putting them in gulags and prison camps and things like that. But his younger self doesn't know that. So his younger self travels to the future. And his younger self is like, who are you? I'm not this guy. You're an idiot. You don't believe in socialism. You don't believe in, the USSR. You're crazy. I don't know how I became this kind of bum. We find out there's all these kind of time loops and paradoxes going on, and these two versions of this guy have to work together in order to fix the time loop, which is a paradox, which is basically you get stuck in. It's like the grandfather paradox. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather, then you never existed to go back in time in the first place. So how can you do it? So they're kind of in this time loop, this paradox, and they have to try to fix it. And the way they fix it is so genius. In the end, I never would have guessed that this was happening, and it was so perfect the way they ended it. I mean, it is well worth seeing. What I didn't like, it was a little bit convoluted, a little bit. Towards the end, they start trying to explain how the time travel works and what the main antagonists are going to do, how they're going to figure out how to get out of the time loop and use it to their advantage. It just kind of didn't really work for me. I didn't understand it. Maybe I'll watch it again. Maybe it's so deep I didn't get it. I need to watch it again. But overall, definitely go see Excursion. It has 3.5 stars, and I don't know why, because it is a really good movie. I'm going to put 5 stars on there after I get off this podcast. But my recorder is running out of space. I need to get a bigger SD card. I used to record on the computer, but sometimes it would skip when I was listening back to it on the podcast, because I'm not a rich man. I don't have like a very nice USB audio interface or whatever. So long story short, talked about all the movies I saw, and we're just going to end the podcast right there. And that's pretty much it. Thanks, you guys, for listening. It's been about 40 minutes, and thanks for sticking with me. And Instagram people, I'm going to be uploading the videos to IGTV instead of going live like I used to, because it just disappears after 24 hours, and people don't get an opportunity to see it unless they were watching it live, and I'm not really down with that. Like, everything's about recording and saving. I'm not, why do I want to record a live video and then have it disappear? Maybe I'll figure out another use for live video on Instagram because it does disappear. I don't know. But that's neither here nor there. In the meantime, in between time, stay holy, my friends. Thank you for listening to Shalom's Unsnobby Music Hobby Podcast. Check out all my links at sdcason.com. That's Sigma Delta CASON.com. And until next time, stay holy, my friends. God love you. Peace out.